Good morning, Husker fans. Welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is Danny Gillette. And how you doing, Danny? It's another beautiful day to be a Husker, and we got another big basketball game this morning.
Another big basketball game this morning. Another chance to improve our seeding in the bracketology. And NCAA Football 25 is coming out. It was just announced, a full reveal in May. So it's been a pretty good week for Danny over here. How are you, Chris?
Yeah, I think everybody was pretty excited about that. That's maybe one of the universal things that college football fans can actually agree on is the fact that they're all excited about the trailer, the video. Well, it really wasn't even a trailer. It was more just a video confirming that the game is going to come out on NCAA 25. We did get some screenshots. There was even one of Nebraska included in there. So that's going to be very fun. In May, I feel like PlayStation 5s I've seen a lot of people, myself included, that haven't bought a console in a long time that are going to be getting the PlayStation 5 just for. So it's going to be, I think there's going to be a rush on PlayStation 5s at some point from all of these college football fans who haven't been gaming for the past decade.
Well, this right here is why I got a PlayStation 5 for Christmas a couple of years ago. I'm like, I don't really game too much, but I'll game while I wait for NCAA Football 25. Now it's coming. I can't believe it's coming. And I've been waiting 10 years for this, so let's do it.
It is going to be very exciting. So before we get into all of our Nebraska Cornhuskers stuff, and we got a lot on tap today. I see some people joining us in the chat already. So good morning, everybody.
Good morning, everybody.
But if you haven't already, please do us a huge favor and hit the like button on this video, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of our future content. We're a great place for hardcore Husker fans, man, here, and HuskerBigRed.com as well. So it's good to see Thomas. Good to see you guys, Co. It's going to be another big game today for Nebraska basketball. Looking at it, you're looking at the bracketology over the past few days. Nebraska's still kind of hanging in that same area, bottom, last four teams to get a bye. So they've kind of actually dropped a little bit. They're down to an 11 seed in the bracketology, the latest released by Joe Lenardi, but they also haven't played this week. Yep. So, not to worry about that, but they do have to take care of business today against Penn State. And Penn State is 12-13 overall, but they're 6-8 in the Big Ten. And, they are very capable. They have two very good scorers in the backcourt. They force a lot of turnovers. They force like 13 turnovers a game, which is always a concerning point with Nebraska. So it's not going to be a cakewalk. I definitely do see, Nebraska coming away with the victory. I mean, nobody since Creighton has beaten them, in this arena, and hopefully they can keep kind of the good vibes going, I guess, in the vault.
Yeah, and the thing about it is it's gonna be interesting to see. They had so many games over a span of a week, and now they have a week off. It'll be interesting to see, if the week off provided them some rest. And I'm gonna be looking for a big game from Casey once again. I think he's really shown over the past couple games that he's found his offensive groove, and not only is he a three-point shot maker, but he is also back to his old self in terms of moving without the basketball. I love to see what Jamarcus Lawrence has been able to do at times off the bench, and so that will add a spark as well in my estimation. And I'm just hoping they can get another win, because each win counts here, obviously, even a little bit more as we enter the stretch run here.
And going to see some other people, Moonbot and Harrison. We got, I guess, our first question of the day here from Harrison Schultz on Facebook. Where do we sit with TJ Lateef? So TJ Lateef, if you're not familiar with that name, 4-star quarterback in the 2025 class, was offered, I think it was February 2nd. That was right after Glenn Thomas got hired. So basically the entire offensive staff was there and had visited him. He is going to take a visit for the spring game, April 27th, an official visit, which was reported this week. He's also going to be visiting potentially Ole Miss and Texas A&M. So I do think that Nebraska, sits in a pretty good spot. I think there's a few options on the board though at quarterback. Madden Amalaveli. I cannot say that last name. Yeah, he also could be taking a visit. So, and he's also from California, another 4-star. So I'm still interested to see where he sits on the board. And there's a lot of other teams kind of in the mix as well, with both of those guys. And you talk about with Lateef, I mean, anytime Ole Miss and Texas A&M are in the mix, that there's going to be a lot of money at play as well. So you can never kind of guarantee anything with those recruitments. And another thing I did see, like people talk about the prediction machine, the on-3 prediction machine. I think they need to understand that just because it said, like, if you click on his profile for TJ Lateef, it says, yeah, there's a 60% prediction for Nebraska to get his commitment. That does not mean that there's been an expert prediction or that any recruiting analyst has put in a prediction. It's just part of a formula that they use. And the reason Nebraska has the lead right now is because they're the only program that has an official visit set up. So it's all based on visits, where the player's located, past history of commitments, and it's a whole formula. So it's all computerized, and that's why you'll see the on-3 prediction machine will be at 80% for somebody, and then it will switch drastically because there's no human intelligence behind that. So don't look at his profile and see, the Nebraska at 60% and think that they're, in the lead for this recruitment. I wouldn't go that far at this point.
I'm not really a huge fan of the prediction machine, to be honest with you. I think it's a better baseline for when a commitment is closer, but when it comes to early recruitments, I'm not a huge fan. And Lateef's got a lot of really, really good offers: Georgia, Miami, Colorado. Anybody is basically offered him. Penn State, Texas A&M, Florida State. So it's not going to be an easy recruitment. It's interesting that they're looking out towards California for quarterbacks, and Glenn Thomas is Lateef's primary recruiter. So I'll be interested to see how much they explore that California area, because California is a quarterback hub, and Nebraska's wise to go to that area in order to find one.
Yeah, I like where they're recruiting, and I'm interested to see how that board, the recruiting board shakes out, and if he's the only guy that winds up visiting, for that spring game, then yeah, he probably will be, the top target. But yeah, I agree with you on I don't have a problem with the on-3 prediction machine. I just think that people need to, put it into context. I think that it can help shape, how the recruitment is going, based on who's getting visits and stuff like that. So I think it can be somewhat useful, but like to go out right now and say, oh, Nebraska's leading this recruitment according to the on-3 prediction machine, that's not accurate. That's I would just put that caveat on it. But I still trust, the crystal balls and stuff more, because more often than not, they're getting that information either from, the recruit and his family or the coaching staff, and the coaching staff has told them, like, yeah, this guy's silently committed, or he's going to be, or, so that's why, those things are still important. And even though those recruiting reporters sometimes drive us crazy, that's why they still, they have those contacts and they have that access. And that's why, they get that information.
And they got to drum up the clicks somehow.
Yeah.
So,
and sometimes they do get it wrong, but that's also, because kids change their mind and things, it's like Keanu Wilhite. I mean, I'm sure he was going to UCLA and then he's like, oh, Chip Kelly's doing all these interviews. I don't want to, my other coach that I just signed with left for another team. And, like if that whole thing doesn't happen, Nebraska probably doesn't get him. So that's why, I do tend to give them a little bit of a break, because recruiting is just a crazy thing altogether.
I agree. And, and you're asking high school kids to give you accurate decisions and predictions. I can tell you, as a former high school kid myself, I was not always accurate and decisive in what I wanted to do either. So there is also that caveat there as well.
I wanted to get back to Thomas's comment. Enjoyed seeing highlights of Husker baseball, probably because you didn't want to pay the subscription for Flow Baseball to actually watch the game. You can listen to it for free on Huskers.com.
There was actually, and I'll post it on my Big Red Banter and on the Husker Big Red page, there was a Twitter link with a Twitter feed of the baseball game that you could watch, but it was not easy to find. And I don't think we're supposed to find it, but next time I find it, I'll post it on our pages, because we deserve to watch without paying for 75,000 streaming services.
Yeah, because Flow Sports, I think, would get you the softball and baseball, but it's like $12 a month, or it's kind of crazy. Like, it's more than Peacock, and I'm like, so I don't know.
Peacock at least gives me like a lot of TV shows and movies. So
yeah, it's somewhat worth it. Yeah. But at any rate, a nice win for Nebraska, 4-1 victory over Baylor. And that was, I think, only the second win over a Power 5 team in the last 20 years or something on opening day. Brett Sears, 5 1/3. I mean, he pitched pretty well, I thought. Rob Childress, I mean, they hired him for a reason. Only gave up 1 run, 7 hits. The offense did the job. So yeah, it was a promising start. They're playing Texas Tech today, I believe, and they're ranked. So that'll be interesting to see. But nice chance to maybe grab a nice non-conference win to open up the season for the Huskers.
Yeah, no, and it was really impressive group of pitchers that Nebraska put out yesterday. Not only Brett Sears, but Tucker Timmerman, who got the win. He also, 2 hits, no earned runs, no strikeouts, but 6 batters faced, and Kyle Perry. They all did a really good job, and I think last year the problem was not enough consistent pitching. We had the bats, we didn't have the pitching. And, Friday we had the pitching, and what was a really nice win. And if this is a sign of things to come, then Nebraska fans should be very pleased. Yes, it's only 1 game, but I am a little bit optimistic about the pitching after last night.
So Husker Chuck points out that Baylor finished last in the Big 12 last season. I did not know that. I'm not like a super expert on college baseball, so thanks for that little tidbit, Husker Chuck. But yeah, I mean, a lot of great points. They did have a great offense last year. Dylan Carey had a couple of doubles yesterday. So they came up with some production. So we'll see. And then I know they play Oklahoma on Sunday. It'd be nice to get a couple of wins at any rate. So it's good to have baseball back.
Absolutely. And for what it's worth, I mean, Mason Marriott for Baylor had 10 strikeouts in 5 2/3 innings, only allowed a run, and yet Baylor still wasn't able to get the victory. So, I mean, that's still a good job by the program to get past the big horse, so to speak, and kind of attack the bullpen. So a solid all-around win by Nebraska baseball in a season that is going to be crucial for this program.
Yeah, I definitely think Will Bolt's got to get this team to the NCAA tournament. There's too much talent. They're picked 5th in the Big Ten preseason rankings, but it's just, I think that baseball. I mean, like Nebraska puts a lot of emphasis on its baseball program more than probably most Big Ten teams do. So I think that's why some of the results have been kind of disappointing.
Garrett Angleem had a home run, which is also good to see. He was a bright spot on the offense last year, so it's good to see him pick up where he left off. And so a pretty solid win, because it's like over the past couple of years, Nebraska has kind of struggled out of the gate in the early parts of the season. I remember the 2020, I believe it was, season, they started off hot, and then COVID hit and kind of shut everything down, obviously, but yeah, it was a good showing by Nebraska, against a tough Baylor pitcher in Mason Marriott, and a win's a win, especially, it's kind of like basketball. These early wins are going to be crucial for, how this program is viewed in the long run, and, it could determine, certain aspects of seeding and postseason play. So these early wins are important.
So to switch gears a little bit, one thing I wanted to talk about, not sure if we've talked about it yet on the stream, but the loss of Philip Simpson, defensive quality control coach. It was reported by Husker Online that he was going to Florida State, and he didn't have anything on the social media like a week ago or so, and so you kind of figured something like that was happening, but it sounds like he's taking another job at Florida State. He was a head coach from, I think it was Miami-Dade, one of the Miami high schools. And he kind of gave Nebraska an in with some of those South Florida recruits. So, I mean, I know that the off-field guys, don't maybe play as big of a role as, the coordinators and stuff, but he played a big part in, I think, some of that South Florida recruiting. So what do you think about that, Danny? Do you think that's a really big loss, or it's just, part of the, I guess, the business of recruiting nowadays?
Business of recruiting, I do think it's a loss, but I think that Rule will be able to find someone, competent enough to, take Simpson's spot. Not that Simpson was bad by any stretch of the imagination, but Rule, I think, has a keen eye for up-and-coming coaches. See Tony White. Now Tony White's getting his flowers, and, I think it also helps when your entire coaching staff can recruit really well, so I'm not too worried. I think I'd be more worried if, as far as the Florida group goes, I'm more worried overall with, if this group, McGahee, Barney, those guys don't do well, then I'd be more worried about recruiting Florida than honestly losing Philip Simpson, because there are a lot of athletes to go around in Florida, and I still think Nebraska, Matt Rule's already made it clear, Texas, Florida, state of Nebraska, even some California now, that those are his areas to recruit. So, I do think it's a loss, but I don't think it's going to hurt our chances in Florida with the fact that we're still going to recruit there.
Yeah, for sure. I'll be interested to see what he does.
Yeah.
In terms of replacements. I know that they hired somebody else away from TCU to be on the recruiting staff, and I'm sure that they'll be adding somebody with Florida ties too. It was interesting how he went. We hired two, a couple of former high school coaches on the staff. Last year originally, and before Bob Wager, obviously, had to be let go. But it'll be interesting to see if he goes that route again, because that's what he's done, traditionally. He's brought in some of these high school coaches or people who have ties to, the high school game in those areas. So I do think that he'll find, somebody there in that area. And, when you're talking about recruiting too, Hawaii is another area they're hitting up. The top ranked player in Hawaii for the 2025 class is visiting Nebraska. So yeah, they're kind of
correct.
Yeah, safety. Yep. They're kind of planting their flag everywhere. So, I like that. Another defensive back, Rylan Dillard Allen, is visiting. He's out of Arizona, and this kid is really, just a Matt Rule recruit. As a junior, he ran, the 100-meter dash in 10.86. So, that right there tells you, all you need to know about him. So starting to set up, some guys. There's an offensive lineman too that put Nebraska in his top 6. I think Jack Lang is his name. Yeah.
Yep.
And I believe he's also set up an official visit. So, that's like 4 or 5 guys that, because there's only, I believe teams are still limited on their official visits. I know players can take in a limited amount, but Nebraska still only has so many to work with. So you can see how they're starting to prioritize some guys in the 2025 class.
That's the thing with this coaching staff. They always have a plan for if something doesn't go according to plan. And so, I wish Simpson the best. He's a really good coach. He's a really respected high school figure in Florida, and I think the program, will be able to withstand the loss, because this coaching staff and Matt Rule always has a plan when things don't go the way that they want it to.
And the kid out of Hawaii, Aiden Manutai, probably saying that wrong, sorry, but 6 foot 170, and he's ranked like 528 right now, but the number 1 player in Hawaii. And I watched some of his film, and he's I think he would fit really well in the 3-3-5. He plays some cornerback, he plays some safety. He really comes down and tackles really well. I mean, he is not one of those corners that's afraid of, he looks like he wants to hit people. So, and I like safeties that can play a little bit of corner, because just the way that football works and the way that teams want to spread you out, because whether it's with a third wide receiver, a fourth wide receiver, a tight end, a running back, your safeties have to cover one-on-one at some point. Otherwise, they're going to be a liability. So I just like to see guys that have been in that role, and I think Nebraska, Tony White gets that. Like Matt Rule even said last year, I didn't know if guys were. Sometimes I didn't know if they were a cornerback or a safety when they were on the field, and Malcolm Hartzog probably is one of those guys. But at the same time, it doesn't really matter. If all your defensive backs can cover and tackle and do the things they need to do, you can really be a positionless defense, which is what I think they essentially want to be.
Yeah, and we're seeing that, with Amari Sanders and Larry Tarver and, players like that. So I think Manutai would fit perfectly in this defense, and even Kamir Prescott, kind of plays that positionless role. So it'll be interesting to watch Manutai's recruitment and see if Nebraska can make a strong push.
Yeah, and it looks like they're kind of setting up for that, spring game, that April 27th weekend, to be, one of their big kind of visit weekends. So, you get guys here, try to get them in the spring, and then try to get them back, around June, or when they have kind of that. Last year they had that barbecue thing, or the cookout, whatever they called it, in that last, recruiting period, in July. I think they'll probably that
was successful. So that's also something to keep in mind as well. I mean, that was a successful event.
I think that really helped get Grant Brix. I think that was one of the things. From that point on, Nebraska really was the leader with Grant Brix. So, in those June visits, obviously, were huge. Getting Nelson and Hall and McMorris and Kalen and all those guys. It wasn't something I thought about. That's interesting. The other day,
Williams.
James Williams. if you think about it, Nebraska flipped 2 quarterbacks that were committed to SEC schools, and both of those SEC schools finished ranked in the top 10 last year. Because Daniel Kalen was committed to Missouri. So it's like it's just interesting that beyond everything else, if I told you like a year, in the 2024 class, Nebraska will flip 2 quarterbacks from SEC schools. I mean, that right there shows you what a job that this coaching staff did recruiting.
I'm still holding that hope for a flip from Matt Zollers, but I don't think I'm going to get it. But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't think he's quite committed yet, though, has he? He's just put his top 4 out.
If we're not in his list, then chances are probably not going to happen.
Yeah, you didn't see much after after they made the offer. You didn't see much reported about it. There wasn't really any of the interviews or anything with him. So, but they do have, and Dylan Duff was another guy that's offered. Again, we'll see if he visits. If not, then it's going to be probably down to the other 2. And at the same time, things change. And this 2025 class, I think it's going to be interesting to see how the quarterback board develops with Dylan and Daniel Kalen signed in 2024.
Yeah, and the results on the field will also undoubtedly help us recruit future quarterbacks. So if things go well, we may see some high quality guys coming in for 2025 and beyond. If things don't go well, then who knows?
So this is Husker Chuck. When I hear positionless defense, I try to imagine Nash covering a receiver.
Probably
not a good
could.
look.
That's the crazy part of it.
Maybe, yeah. Right. Well, right now he's only 285 right now, so
probably could honestly.
But yeah,
put him at corner.
Not really that, but I mean, even on the defensive line, though, he can be a nose tackle. There's a 3 technique, and so yeah, it's not really positionless in moving, a defensive lineman out of there. But
Robinson, Nash, Will Height, James Williams, Buckley has actually moved to the offensive line. I'm going to say Roquan Buckley, but that's a solid defensive line group right there.
Yeah, Van Poppel,
yeah.
I hope that I hope that Maverick Noonan, is able to come back, and because he did some impressive things in spring last year. I was excited about him.
I'm interested to see what happens with the running back group this spring. I mean, Irvin's out, Ramirez out.
Dylan, I'm interested in Dylan Rogers. See what he does.
Dylan Rogers, yep.
Who's the linebacker from Texas? Eric Fields. What's up with it? Eric Fields was like, everybody was sure he was going to play last year, and then he barely played at all.
He was the version of 2020.
Am I getting his name wrong? What is his name?
Eric Fields? No, you're right. From Ardmore, Oklahoma, I believe.
Okay.
And like Mitch said, he's gone. So he is no longer on the team.
Did he transfer?
He did. He left. I don't know where he transferred to, but he is gone.
I must have missed that one.
Which is kind of a bummer because I really liked him as a linebacker. He was one of my favorite players in the 2023 class. But, such is life with this transfer portal. And I'm interested to see, for me, and I know I just said it, but this is going to be my kind of big thing to watch during spring ball. How will the running back position shape up, and can Ramir and Gabe get healthy? Because again, it's the same problem, unfortunately. And if they don't, then we might be in for another wild ride at the running back position this year.
I think we'll be okay. And yeah, Mitch, I guess said he had a hard time.
Yeah,
following.
Yeah, I do hear that at the time.
Do remember now.
And I had forgotten, but
I guess I just forgot he did he actually enter the portal? Did he just get kicked off the team?
I think he's no longer on the team, whatever that means. So
I guess that's the same with Corey Collier. I don't know if he entered the transfer portal or if he just.
And I was excited about him too. I don't know.
Yeah, he just fell off, and then but you look at the team that he's just not going to play really this year.
Yeah, the safety room is so deep.
It's loaded. Yeah, I mean you got Gifford, you got Buford, you got
Benning.
Singleton, Benning. Well, I mean, there's a lot of guys that
Donovan Jones.
Yeah, I mean, and even just the upperclassmen. I mean, I think those freshmen are going to have a hard time playing. I think Benning might have the best chance, but but it's not going to be easy, especially if Hartzog plays, safety too quite a bit. And then you got Tommy Hill's going to be out there. I think Bly Hill's going to be.
Tommy Hill, I think, is going to be more a corner, though.
Well, yeah, Tommy Hill's going to be a corner for sure. But
Bly
I just
Hill,
mean he's going to be one of those. He's going to have, whether you're going with 4 or 5 defensive backs, like Tommy Hill's going to be one of the guys that's always out there. Hartzog's going to be one of them. Gifford's going to be one of them. Then I think after that, you've got a little bit of after those 3, I think there's some competition. But Deshaun Singleton played really dang good last year before he got hurt. But so can he recapture that? What can Marcus Buford? Can he be the guy that he was before injury?
Bullock, he's a linebacker, but I thought he played pretty well as like a linebacker kind of safety hybrid type player.
Yeah, and they'll need some production from him for sure. So, because unfortunately, I know everybody wanted Ernest Hausman coming back, but I don't think that's happening. So,
no, I mean, I think he kind of made his bed as far as a potential Nebraska reunion. Mitch says with Cork being out for spring, fall, and likely start of the season, Jenkins would be a good pick because I thought he played really well last year. I was very impressed with his development last year, and I thought he was very solid in his technique, and I thought he was a very good pass protector in particular, and that's what we needed at times last year more so than others. The line itself, I thought, took a leap last year, and I think Evans Jenkins was a big part of that. I always go back to, I think it was it Purdue or Northwestern when we had to kind of start like almost a backup offensive line, and they held their own, and Jenkins was a big part of that.
Yeah, I can't quite remember, but
I think it might have been Purdue.
Yeah, I definitely could see him. I could see him starting there. I think it would be probably him or Levtoski. I think Levtoski's had some experience, obviously, at guard, or unless one of these other younger guys can get into the mix. Sam Sledge.
Honestly, you can't count on Cork too much anymore, honestly. And I hate to say that, but I mean,
I think it just depends on his health, because if he's healthy, I think that he'll be fine at guard. I think he played pretty solid at tackle last year before he got hurt. So, I mean, if he could just get healthy, and I know obviously that's the goal for him with fall camp. Like I think that he would do fine at guard. But we'll see. Obviously, he's got to get healthy, and I don't know. It seems like they still want to use him at tackle. So I'm still not. We'll see what happens there.
If that's the case, then keep him off the field.
I mean, unfortunately, the thing is if Teddy goes down, like I think they would want to start Teddy, but then if Teddy gets hurt, then I think that's like their solution is moving Cork to tackle again.
And I'm not totally against Cork. It's just, with the injuries and stuff, he's been unreliable, and that's not his fault. I mean, he's not choosing to get injured, but it's time for some new faces on the line, I think. I think this particular group has kind of run its course, in my opinion.
So, Mitch, Teddy, Prohashka, Justin, Evan Jenkins,
Ben Scott, Micah Mazuka, and Bryce Benhart. That doesn't look bad at all. I'd be fine with that.
Latovsky, who would be in the mix, I think, for both of those guard spots, because I don't know. Rule didn't have glowing things to say about Micah so far. I'm sure he'll get there, in terms of his conditioning and just buying into what Nebraska is. But I do think Henry can put himself in that mix, and I wouldn't rule out Grant Bricks playing sometime this year if they want to play him at guard, because I think he can be an elite offensive guard. I know I've said that before, but I think he could be one of the best, offensive line recruits Nebraska's had in a long time if they use him correctly.
That particular group that Mitch put doesn't look bad at all, though. I'd be happy to go into the season with that. Yeah,
and they've all played, and they've all been experienced. Like
Scott has played really well last year. He was a great get, and I think one of the more underrated gets in the 2023 transfer portal group.
Personally, I would still take a healthy Turner Corcoran over Justin Evan Jenkins, but that's just me. At guard, I do think that I hope Nebraska doesn't make the same mistake with Grant Bricks and try to make him into a left tackle, because I'm not sure if he's gonna be as successful there, because at some point you do have to have a certain amount of length to play that position, and or at least have some excellent footwork too. I mean, you got to either be, and so I think he can do that, but I think he can be an All-American guard. whereas I think he might just be, an above average tackle. So that I'm not trying to say that in a bad way, but I just really think if they put him at guard, I think he could be, a really, really good player. And at tackle, I'm just not sure it's going to work out that way. And Turner Corcoran is, a main reference point for that. So I could be totally wrong on that point, but I just see a lot of the, because Turner Corcoran was a pretty damn high ranked recruit too, and then they tried to make him a left tackle when he wasn't. And it kind of, hurt his entire career. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so hopefully they don't make, like you said, the same mistake with this group. And hopefully they can kind of, sort the offensive line out, because I do think there's a lot of talent there. It's just about developing them. And I feel more confident in this coaching staff developing the offensive line than I do the last group of coaches. Let's just say that.
And Jacob Hood is what's the status of Jacob Hood here? Sorry, I'm thinking out loud. He's still on the roster. 6'8". He's listed at 6'8", 350. I think, he played one game last year, so I think there's more development there that needs to be done. And he hopefully would be if they needed a tackle this year, hopefully he would be able to, at least be in the mix, be in the conversation. That's what I'm hoping, because you always want to have a swing tackle. You always want to have your two starters and then a swing tackle who's ready to play on either side. If your right tackle or your left tackle gets hurt. So, that is up for competition. And he certainly has the ability to do that. Although he's, I just worry sometimes about, the guy's 6'8", 350 pounds. So, that sounds great. But at times, if you're trying to block edge rushers that are 240 pounds, 230 pounds, that's sometimes doesn't work out like you think it's going
Who
to.
can move quickly?
Yeah. So let's see, Mitch. He has bad ankles and it's too heavy. We didn't know about the ankles when we brought him in. I wouldn't be shocked to see him leave after the spring.
I think we're going to see some surprise departures after spring. I don't have any insight into who exactly, and I'm not saying that to tease anybody, but there are some positions on this roster that are particularly full. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some departures after spring.
But yeah, it makes it's just the point I make. It's just too heavy. That is just hard to, 6'8", 330. Sure, but 6'8", 350. That's just that to me, I just don't know how you can move and be those guys, and pass protect against elite athletes. Like I said, 230 pound, 240 pound guys are running 4.6, and you're 350. Unless you've got elite feet, and Mitch is talking about his bad ankles and super long arms, then you're going to struggle. So. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Hood leave, because I do think that he's going to get passed up on the depth chart, So, and that's just, I have no problem with guys if they're not going to play, go get a better opportunity elsewhere. It makes sense for both sides. It doesn't make sense for Nebraska to have a guy that they really don't want to play, and it doesn't make sense for you to sit somewhere when you could play somewhere else. And I'm sure, Jacob Hood could probably play. Even if it's at the FCS level, there's places he could play somewhere.
I'm watching the status of Emmett Johnson very closely, and I would not be surprised at all to see him leave.
Yeah, 1 foot out the door. I can believe that. I can buy that, because they recruited over him with Dante Dowdell. There's no ifs, ands, or buts around that.
Yeah.
They went out and they saw that they didn't have a bell cow running back. They saw one in Dante Dowdell and they got him. And Emmett Johnson can take offense to that all he wants. That's just life. And my problem is I still think that, he would have a role here. And I don't know where else he's going to go that he's going to be, like the automatic starter. I just don't know that place exists for him. Maybe at a group of 5 school, I guess, but, is he going to transfer to another Big Ten team and be their RB1? I don't think so. And I do believe that, he did run the ball well last year. I think Nebraska would have a good role for him. I don't think they're going to sit there and give Dante Dowdell the ball 25 times a game. That would be stupid. You need to mix up your carries. Gabe Ervin has not been able to stay healthy. Ramir Johnson hasn't been able to stay healthy. So I think if he does leave, he'll be walking away from a pretty good opportunity at Nebraska.
I agree, but I could also understand the why he would have 1 foot out the door. With that being said, I'll be interested to see. Well, this is exactly like what we were talking about. I think he would have a very big role as the like the Anthony Grant AJ Allen combo of a couple of years ago. I think the 1-2 punch would be would definitely still be there. And to Mitch's point, you can't count on Irvin and Ramir anymore. They're great players, but they just can't seem to stay healthy. So they will. Those two will have to climb their way back up the depth chart, and it's a shame because it seems like they've really been at Nebraska for quite some time, but they just haven't been able to put it together. Especially Ramir, because I always thought he would be a good receiving back. But between the 2022 season where he didn't get utilized at all, and then last year when he got hurt, it just hasn't worked out.
I do think it would be, Emmett Johnson, he had 90 carries last year and averaged 4.6 per attempt. And most of those carries were in Big Ten games. He had averaged 5.8 against Purdue, 4.4 against Michigan State, 4.9 against Maryland, 3.8 against Wisconsin. And he had a 28-yard run against Purdue, a touchdown. He had a 29-yard run against Maryland, an 18-yard run against Wisconsin. So he did produce, some explosive plays. But that's still only 90 carries, and that's a lot to, it's not like they could go into the season with the running back room as is. Even if Johnson was going to be the starter, they would have had to add somebody else. So, I mean, it's just, that's just the way that it works. And I feel like they will be losing a quality player. I do feel like Emmett Johnson, could be a nice piece for somebody else, but I just
But I
don't
don't
see
think
him.
they're also going to run the ball as much as they did last year too. So there might be even less carries to go around.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to run the ball less, obviously, because last year, I mean, they ran the ball basically like a service academy. I mean, so they were like our Army and Air Force, and
Yeah,
that's how bad
they really were.
That's how bad the quarterback play was. Like literally, outside of a triple, they basically ran the ball as much as like when Tom Osborne was calling the plays. Like no joke, they averaged like 18 passes a game. That's not happening. I would like I do hope that they invest heavily in the run though, because you talk about having a freshman quarterback. I still do worry about that. I mean, I still think that I'm on the Dylan. I've been driving the Dylan Raiola train. Like, don't get me wrong, but I do think he's going to struggle at times, and I do think that it will benefit him greatly if they invest in the running game, if they're constantly putting him in manageable situations, if they have the ability to play action pass, because that's where you get your explosive plays from. I mean, look at last year. The most explosive plays they got were on those play action type passes, and if you actually have a running game and then a quarterback who could deliver those, like we could be ringing up 4 or 5 explosive pass plays per game instead of like one.
Yeah, and I think as much as Dylan Raiola is a freshman quarterback and all that, it can't be worse than last year. So, I mean, yes, I am tempering my expectations a little bit, but I'm ready for the Dylan Raiola era to begin.
Yeah, it's not going to be. I'd be shocked if we had 25 turnovers. So
that's a crazy number just to even hear said out loud. 25. Ugh.
But yeah, I mean, a big part of the running game was the quarterback run game last year, at least at the first part of the season. Purdy was able to, scramble. I do think that Dylan Raiola is going to provide a little bit more in that area, in terms of scrambling and, doing some stuff like that. I think I think he'll run for a first down or two a game, when he needs to. But the running game is going to be different, but I feel better about the offensive line going into this season, and I think Dante Dowdell is a legit back. So it's people want to talk about how it's just like the offensive line, but you got to be able to make people miss. Like the great backs. I mean, look at Christian McCaffrey. He can take a blade that's blocked for 2 yards and turn it into 10 or 20. I mean, that's what good running backs do. I'm not saying Dowdell's that, but I do think he can get more than the guys last year did. I'll say that.
And I think we are going to miss Grant. I always thought, despite his, issues with fumbles sometimes, he did show up for every game. He was very rarely out with injuries. I can't recall any major injury he had while he was at Nebraska, and he ran hard. So the running game is definitely going to miss him.
Let's see. Chuck, I hope that we are 60-40 running team. If we throw 70%, we're going to have trouble with windy days. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're going to be throwing 70% of the time. I could see us throwing maybe 60% of the time at some point. Next year, I think it's going to be pretty balanced, to be honest. But the thing about it, when you have somebody that can really throw the football like Dylan Raiola, those windy days don't bother you as much. That's why, like everybody, like the Packers, all those years they won. They're like, oh, the Packers always win in cold weather. Yeah, they had 2 quarterbacks that had big hands that can throw the football in cold weather, and Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre. So if you have somebody that's an elite thrower of the football, those elements like, the cold and the wind, they don't affect you as much. So I'm not as worried about that as I would be if it was Heinrich Haarberg throwing the ball.
I agree. And, just mechanically, in terms of quarterback mechanics, I think that will also be able to help with windy days as well, because sometimes the ball didn't come out of Harburg's hand correctly. And again, he was put in a tough spot, and he did the best he could. And so I'm not faulting him. It's just mechanically, he just needed a little bit more work.
Yeah, there's definitely some things to fix there. Hopefully Glenn Thomas does that, because like Matt Rule said, I mean, he mentioned, there's a chance, in this modern era of college football, you need all three quarterbacks. So I do think that, that Harburg's going to play at some point. So, at any rate.
I'm excited for the spring game, though, because I'll be interested to see, what they kind of show and what they don't show. Last year, we saw a lot of Jeff Sims passing the football. We saw some running, and we saw a little bit of the offensive line play. I remember Kai Wallen had a big spring game, and I'll be interested to see what kind of the overarching themes is this year. I remember we were me and you wrote some pieces after the spring game where we were all excited for Jeff Sims, and just goes to show that spring game isn't everything. So keep that in mind when watching.
Yeah, no, it's not. But it's. I don't think anybody knew that things were just going to totally fall apart for Jeff Sims. I mean, he did look really good in the spring game, so you can only react to what you see live. I don't think anybody realized like 2 months later he was going to have a tough time holding on to the snap.
And I think once Jeff Sims started to get into his own head, then it completely fell apart for him, and that's never good. So I think he would probably have been a better fit somewhere else, but it just didn't work at Nebraska.
I'm trying to that I mentioned Dylan Raiola's hand size. I'm trying to find it to be honest right now, but I'm not. I mean, he's 6'3", like 230, so he's a big dude. So
Harburg in an option package would be cool. Kind of Harburg coming out of the backfield, and have that speed. I mean,
I don't see him as a running back.
We might need to utilize him out of the running back position if things get too dicey. But I mean, honestly,
I think he's a better direct snap runner. I think that the way that he gets going, it just some guys in that handoff, I just don't see it with him as a running back. I could see him as a tight end, catching some passes, and I can see him as a direct snap, wildcat quarterback.
And he did have a couple of good throws to the tight end over this in the spring game, and I thought he had a couple good throws. I mean, it was the type of thing where you took it as a spring game, and you kind of just were happy with what you saw. He did struggle a little bit, and looking back on it now, that probably should have been a forewarning that of things to come during the season. But I didn't think he looked terrible.
Yeah, I mean, he threw the ball. I thought he threw the ball well, and he can throw the football well. It's not like he definitely had the most arm talent on the team last year. He just fell apart with his decision making, and that was the, if you're thinking while you're playing quarterback, you're not going to play quarterback well, and that was so. I still say that Jeff Sims, most of his problems, were mental more than physical. Like the guy has talent, he just for whatever reason. He can't get himself in a place on the field where he can just let his talent shine. So that was unfortunate, but the pressure at Nebraska was just too much for him.
And it'll be interesting to see how Raiola and Kalen handle the pressure of Nebraska as well, because Nebraska is a pressure cooker, and we certainly don't help things at times, but it is what it is.
I haven't seen anything about Sims.
I haven't seen anything either. So
could be, he might end up going down to an FCS team or something.
At least he graduated, so he does have that. So
as he did not. Yeah, I mean, when you struggle to catch the snap, I mean, you're not going to get some. But an FCS team, I would take a shot on him, but we'll see if he gets to that point. And especially as freshman starting, that's why I do think the running game is going to be important. But the other part of it though is Dylan Raiola is not. It's not like he's unfamiliar with the spotlight. I mean, he's been around it for a long time, and
maybe if Kearney needs a quarterback, Sims can come in and Sims can come in and play.
Yeah. I would think probably more, I think a group of 5 team would do well to get him, honestly, but
Honestly, somewhere where he's
he's
not
better.
in the
He's better
spotlight.
than Logan Smothers, and Logan Smothers played for Jacksonville State some last year. So you
Well, I
can't.
think Logan Smothers didn't do too bad for himself either.
I know, that's what I'm saying. You can't tell me that Jeff Sims isn't more talented than Logan Smothers. So if he can play at the G5
Luke
level, then
McCaffrey, the legendary wide receiver for the Rice Owls.
yeah. Plus, I mean, with Sims, I don't think he expected to run the ball 20 times a game, and that's
Nobody
kind
did.
of what we had to
Nobody
do.
did. Even Marcus Satterfeld didn't. You would see where he would, throw like deep balls the first couple drives, and then Matt Rule would yell at him to run the ball, and Marcus Satterfeld would be like, "Oh, okay," and he started to run. I mean, nobody expected any of the offensive issues to happen last season.
Yeah, unfortunately, they got the wrong quarterback, and that is the reason they didn't make a bowl game. Who knows? It's interesting that Chuba didn't play earlier, and I guess maybe he was hurt, but I mean, at the same time, though, he always messed. He screwed it up at the end against Iowa, and he did the same thing against Maryland and Wisconsin. So it's like, that's why you had to get a different quarterback, and they were going to get Kyle McCord if not for Dylan Raiola.
I would have been happy with 2. I mean, if we didn't get Dylan Raiola, I would have been happy with Kyle McCord.
I still think Kyle McCord's pretty decent. I think he got a bad rap. I mean, to me, it's like the Ohio State fans that think Will Howard's an automatic upgrade over Kyle McCord. Like, you're crazy, man. Like, the only reason Will Howard even entered the transfer portal is because Kansas State didn't want him anymore because Avery Johnson's their starter. So
we were recruiting Avery Johnson at one point, which kind of stings, but I would have liked Avery Johnson. I remember being really high on him when he was coming out of high school.
I mean, so Will Howard's good, but I mean, literally think about the fact that Ohio State, their starting quarterback is Kansas State's QB2. I mean, that's what we're talking about, So like, let's slow the roll of the juggernaut Ohio State talk a little bit because Will Howard ain't it. If he had to leave because he wasn't going to beat out Avery Johnson, like I just think that pushing Kyle McCord out maybe wasn't the smartest thing.
I mean, I would honestly kind of rather have Will Howard than Kyle McCord, but
I mean, if they run with him, if they run the Chip Kelly offense, yeah. I still don't think I don't think you're beating Georgia with with Will Howard though. So
I mean, you weren't beating Georgia with Kyle McCord, so
yeah, probably not.
I mean, although Georgia was probably the most beatable that they've been in quite some time last year, and every single team. Well, actually, I was going to say every single team, but Alabama didn't blow it, so many teams did. So
they had a really pretty easy schedule, though, too.
Georgia?
Yeah.
Yeah, they always do. McCord, they could have been in top 12.
I still think they can be with Dylan Raiola.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Kyle McCord is. Yeah, I think that Kyle McCord, could have came in here and thrown 20 touchdown passes, but I think Dylan Raiola can too. I absolutely do. I mean, it's just is he going to throw some interceptions? Sure, but he's gonna make some plays. He's got the most talented arm that Nebraska has ever had at quarterback. I don't think that is that bold of a statement to make. No. Like, there has never been a guy like that at Nebraska ever. So
let's see. Whoops. Hold on. I got it. Oh. All right, good. Purdy was a 50. Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And the thing about it was there was no one quarterback that was, limiting turnovers better than the other. They all committed tons of turnovers, and it was kind of like the alarm bells kind of went off pretty early that we didn't have a solid quarterback room at the time. And, thankfully Matt Rule knew that and addressed it pretty quickly.
Nebraska will appear in the top 25 at some point this season. May not finish there, but yeah, possibly. Very possible. I wouldn't be shocked at that. I'm not going to predict it, but I do think that I think there's a chance they can win 8 or 9 games this year for sure, but we'll see. I mean, it all depends on that quarterback position, like we said, and if Dylan Raiola is the guy that we think he's going to be, and if Dowdell is the guy we think he can be, and all that, and staying healthy, if you have a bunch of starters get hurt, then your plan can go downhill pretty quickly. But I do think that they've built a pretty solid amount of depth. on offense and defense. Thanks to the transfer portal and some of the recruiting that Matt Rule's done in these first two classes. So I definitely feel like he's got the roster and he's got everything that he needs, for this team to make that second year leap. They did. They had a 4-win improvement in year 2 at Temple and a 5-win improvement in year 2 at Baylor. So what's the improvement going to be for Nebraska? 2? Is it going to be 3, 4? I mean, if it's anywhere in that, if it's in that 3 to 4 range, I mean, we're talking 8, 9 wins. If he gets 4 or 5, this team might be in the playoff. I mean, and
Yeah.
I'm not making things up. I'm just saying, if Matt Rule does what he has done in other places, this team will probably be contending for a playoff spot this year. And that's it. Keep in mind the 12-team playoff.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's a stretch to say at all. I mean, had we had good quarterback play last year, we would have been in business. And, Husker Chuck kind of mentions it. We win 8, 9, maybe even 10 games. And, I think, our defense definitely kept us in games, and all we needed was a little bit of quarterback play to push us over the edge, and we just didn't get it last year. This year, and in future years, I think that's going to be different.
So let's see here. Mitch says, yeah, Kostep, I feel that relies a lot on the Colorado game. A lot of hype will be tagged on that one. And then Mitch, to kind of piggyback, if they can beat the Buffs, we will be undefeated going into Columbus. So let's see what the schedule.
I don't think that's a crazy prediction by any means either.
No, so UTEP is week 1, then Colorado, Northern Iowa, and then Illinois. Those are all at home. Then your first away game is at Purdue. Then you play Rutgers at home, and then you're at Indiana, and that's your first 6 games.
Purdue kind of worries me a little.
Well, that's your first 7. That's your first 7 games. So
okay,
if I can count here correctly, sorry guys, I'm trying to count on the fly. Yeah, so that's your first 7 games going into Ohio State. Yeah, that'll be. I mean, I could see those. Yeah, Purdue won't be easy. They have Hudson Card back, and I do think Ryan Walters is a good coach. Indiana actually is not going to be. They're going to be better with that guy they got from Old Dominion, and they have a better quarterback. So those games aren't going to be easy, but you would want to hope that Nebraska can win those games. But even if they win one of those games, they'd be 6-1.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
which is where you probably need to be, because the last 5 games are at Ohio State, home against UCLA.
I'm not worried about UCLA.
Okay, I know that, but if you look at the ESPN S&P rankings, UCLA is ranked above Nebraska, which tells you that they've got talent on their roster. So, I mean, just because they have a new head coach doesn't mean they're going to be a pushover. Especially if they don't lose anybody.
Know much about football. Just take a look at their recruiting rankings.
Yeah, I know, but I think Bill Connolly does, though. Bill Connolly is one of the few people I think does know something about football.
That's fair.
Because last year he was pounding the table about Michigan being number 1 all year, and he was right. So at any rate, I'm just saying, I think that when you look at those rankings, I mean, they all sound pretty. I mean, there's like 10, and Nebraska's like 9th or whatever, and they're pretty highly ranked. And the one thing is, in the S&P Plus, Nebraska's projected to have the 115th best offense. So I think that is where they can really improve, because I don't think they're going to be that bad on offense. So
no, they can't be any worse than they were last year. So,
and then, but anyways, after that, then they play at USC, and then home against Wisconsin, and then at Iowa.
Wisconsin's a toss-up because Tyler Van Dyke fits that offense really well. I know he had his problems at Miami, but Miami didn't develop him correctly. And then Iowa, that's a toss-up too, because that's a game that everybody always brings their A game for, and Iowa's defense is going to be tough. They're going to lose pieces, but they'll still be a tough game.
So yeah, let's catch up here. I feel Coach says that's a crazy prediction. No way they run all of them. Colorado and Rutgers are the toughest games for Husker Chuck. Rutgers also could be a loss, according to Scott. Rutgers is at home, so I think Rutgers is going to be a good team, but I would if you're telling me a game that I think Nebraska could lose, I would see maybe either at Purdue or at Indiana before I see them losing at home to Rutgers. That's just
Rutgers
me.
is tough, though. I mean, they are tough, so I could definitely see where people are coming from with that, but I'd be more worried about the Purdue game.
They'll be pesky. They'll be like They'll
They
make
always
it like 27-17 or something. And the thing about Rutgers is like if you go in and turn the ball over 3 times, like they'll absolutely beat you. I mean, they almost beat Michigan last year. So the last 2 times they went to Michigan, they almost beat them. But I do think Nebraska will beat Rutgers though. It's like I feel like Nebraska and Rutgers want to do a lot of the same things. You know, they want to be this physical. I just think Nebraska has more talent, and their quarterback Gavin Wimsatt, you know, he did play some last year, but I have a hard time seeing him winning.
He's been there forever.
Well, that's because this is only his 3rd year, but that's because he left high school and he enrolled as a high schooler. So he left like midway through his senior season to join them. So
He's been there forever. I ordered a November Blizzard.
he did he did the Quinn Ewers thing. So
I'm hoping a November Blizzard for the UCLA game. That would be nice. Give them a little taste of Big Ten football that they probably weren't anticipating.
It's going to be. I mean, I'm interested to see what Deshaun Foster does with that team. You know, and it's it's a weird situation because, and maybe one reason why they didn't attract that many outside hires is like the entire staff was signed as contracts. So basically, like you couldn't even go hire your own assistants.
A lot of money tied up in those contracts. Yeah.
So I mean, kind of interesting, but you know, I do think Deshaun Foster will bring a different attitude. And I mean, UCLA has always had talent. I'm not saying they've had talent like USC, but you know, it's in a lot of ways like Nebraska. Talent's never really been the issue for UCLA. It's been a lot of other problems, and one of them is that they don't care that much about football, to be honest. So that's that's the number one issue right there with UCLA football is it's number 2 in the athletic department. It's number 2 priority.
Yeah, and honestly, the basketball team is not what they used to be either. So maybe they should invest more in football.
Yeah, they lost a lot of guys. They lost a lot of talent the last couple of years, but yeah, and they did kind of underachieve. But yeah, UCLA might not be able to afford the fuel. We're coming up on our hour here, guys. So if you got any other comments or questions, let's. I wanted to make some final predictions here too on Nebraska Penn State. So put you on the record, Danny. What's your prediction for today?
Let's see.
I know you love making predictions, so.
Oh yeah, I love it. I'm always right.
It's your favorite.
This is going to be a game that Nebraska should win, but we're going to play lazy and we're going to make it tough on ourselves. So Nebraska 75, Penn State 67.
Nice. That's pretty close to what I got. I was ahead of the game, so I wrote my keys and predictions already last night at huskerbigred.com, so you can check those out if you want to get my thoughts on the game. But I went 79-69 Nebraska.
Oh, that's pretty close, yeah.
So I just think they're too tough to beat in the vault. Penn State can make this close. They got a couple of dudes that can score, but I just think Nebraska's going to get the ball inside, and that'll be the difference in the game.
Yeah, and I think how Casey plays, just moving without the basketball and creating looks for others and taking shots that he feels comfortable with and calculated shots, not just throwing it up and hoping it goes in. Although he can do that too, but I think his play and how he plays an overall game offensively will be important as well. Will Carter Nelson start a game at tight end this year? I'd say yes.
I'm going to say yes because Nebraska will start a game with 2 tight ends, and he'll be one of them.
Will this be the 6th year in a row where a portal receiver leads the team in catches? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say Malachi Coleman or Jalen Lloyd will lead the team in catches this year.
I know I said that maybe Fedoni would lead the team in catches, and I still think that's possible, but I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to go with Jamal. I think Jamal Banks will lead the team in yards and receptions, but it will be close. It will be close.
I'm excited to see those Nair and Banks. I think those two are great additions.
The way that Matt Rule's been talking about him, that's just made me feel better about his chances. So and he didn't have. I mean, and he played with Hartman, and then didn't have a great quarterback the next year, and still produced.
Produced at a high level. That's actually something I'll be watching during the spring game. Banks and Nair.
Husker Chuck predicts the Tominaga goes bonkers, Nebraska by 12. That'll be maybe.
Definitely see that, especially with the week off. Yeah.
Penn State doesn't like to allow 3-pointers though, but Casey doesn't. He doesn't mind if he's defended on the 3-pointers. So we'll see how that works out.
To say the least, yeah. If Fedoni doesn't improve, maybe.
I think that was an answer to the tight end question. Yeah. I do think Fedoni is going to improve this year, though. We'll see. I feel like if it's going to be this year, because I feel like he's going to be healthy. So, I'm hoping that he'll be like, Wes Welker 2 years after the surgery, not year one after the surgery. You know what I mean?
Wes Walker, Patriots with Walker, or Wes
Yeah.
Walker?
Wes Welker Patriots, when he first did the ACL, like the next year, he came back and he caught like 90, 80, 90
07?
passes.
Yeah, I remember
I
that.
can't remember. He was like good and caught like, he was like 9, but then the next year he was like, 120 and like, I'm not, so I'm hoping that Fedoni's just going to be like truly, truly healthy this year and that we'll finally see like the reason he was a top 50 recruit.
And have a good quarterback to get him the football. That's
Yeah.
also
That will help
help
Malachi
them.
Coleman
Yeah,
too. Yeah, that'll help him
it'll help
out.
everybody.
Husker Chuck Banks will be the top receiver. I think so, but I think it'll be like I said, it's going to be it'll be close. So
Starting wide receivers: Coleman, Lloyd, Banks, and Nair.
yeah, I'm gonna go. Yeah, I think those four. I think it's hard to narrow them out because who knows how they're going to work in the slot. But yeah, I would say that's how it's going to work. Or maybe Banks, Coleman, and then Nair in the slot with Jalen Lloyd also getting some snaps in there. A lot of
You think
snaps.
Troy Barney plays this year?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think that they'll give him. I think they'll find a way to get him some. I think he'll have a role kind of like Malachi last year, like by the middle of the season, like him and maybe Davon Hall will start to work their way into the mix a little bit. Yeah,
All these
that
names,
bums me out.
it's just nice to have options.
It is a bummer that I forgot about Malachi's injured, so we'll see how that. But that does open up some opportunities for other guys, so I think he'll be fine.
It stinks because he was also hurt during fall camp last year a little bit. So
Yep. And you never want to have, those setbacks and those injuries, you just anytime you're missing reps, that hurts your development a little bit. So, but I
I'm
know
not too
he'll
worried about Coleman. I am terrified about the fact that our running backs are banged up a little bit, but I'm not worried about Coleman. I think he'll be okay.
Yeah, and I don't even know what his injury is, so but yeah, better to be safe, than sorry with a Ferrari like Malachi Coleman.
And this right here, folks, is why you recruit 75 million wide receivers.
Well, and the thing is you don't want to get, if it's like if it's like a hamstring or like something like that, you don't want to have that be a recurring. And I think that's what he was dealing with last year. And I know people might want to say, like, but those when you're a sprinter like that and you run like that. I mean, look at Christian Watson from the Packers. He's dealing with that all the time. And once you start seeing those flare up, they come back. So I don't know if that's what he's dealing with, but hopefully it's not something like that, and I'm fine resting him. He'll be fine by the time of fall.
Yeah, I have to say, I run about half his speed, and I always have a risk of blowing out my hamstring. Maybe not even half his speed. Maybe like a fifth of his speed, and I still have bad hamstring. So I can't imagine what it's like for him.
Okay, we'll make this our last question for the day. Thanks for all the interaction today, you guys.
Yeah, we appreciate it. You kept us busy today.
Can Dowdell be a 20+ carry running back, or will this be a room that 3-4 get 8 to 10 each? I think he'll get. I do think yes. I don't think he's going to get 20 per game. I think like his average will be around like 17, 18, 19. But I do think he will be like the bell cow. I think he'll have a few games next year where he gets about 20, and then I think the other guys will. You'll have somebody else that'll get 8 to 10.
Yeah, I mean, could he be? I mean, yeah. But I honestly think it all depends on the depth come the opener. I really do, because if depth's an issue, I could see him being a 20 carry running back a lot more than just a couple times again, just a couple games a season.
But realistically, though, I mean, yeah, if Gabe Irvin was healthy and you had Emmett Johnson, you could be in a situation where you just give 3 guys like 10, and that can be effective too. It just some running backs are better when they get more carries. Some guys don't need that. Some guys are. They'll get stuffed, they'll get a yard or two, and then they hit 20, 30, and they kind of build on their,
so they kind of get the motor running, so to speak.
Yeah. So it just kind of depends. And I don't know about Dowdell enough to say, and he only got 17 carries with Oregon last year. So.
Well, Oregon criminally misused him, and they have a history of doing that as a program. But I think honestly, this might be a big spring and big fall camp for Quentin Ives. I really do. I think this could be a big couple of months for him to really assert himself, especially if some of the other guys are hurt.
Yeah, it'll be fun to see, second year players ascending. That's always something to watch during the spring, and that's something we'll be talking about in this next month. So,
Yeah.
thanks everybody for joining us for another chat. Hopefully, we're all celebrating a Nebraska basketball win here in a few hours, and Nebraska baseball. So, make sure if you haven't already, like and subscribe to the channel and like this video. We really appreciate all your interactions. Have a great weekend, and as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.